My name is Aria, and I thought betrayal had already taught me every possible lesson. I was wrong. You see, not long ago, my mother, an extraordinary woman who built her own fortune from nothing, was destroyed by someone she trusted like family. Her maid. Maria. She stole from us, ran off with her boyfriend, and thought she could enjoy the luxury that wasn't hers to begin with. But in the end, justice caught up with her. I thought that chapter was closed. I thought my mom and I could finally heal. But I didn't realize betrayal sometimes grows roots, and those roots don't die just because you cut down the tree. At first, it started like any other story of love. He walked into my life so casually I didn't even notice the warning signs. His name was Adrian. He had this disarming smile, the kind that seemed to reach his eyes. He was tall, sharp-dressed, but never flashy. And most importantly, he seemed to see me. Not as the daughter of a millionaire. Not as someone living in the shadow of her mother's wealth and tragedy. But as a woman. Just Aria. And after everything that had happened with Maria, my mother's maid, I wanted to believe in good people again. I wanted to believe that not everyone around us had an angle, that not everyone was waiting for the perfect moment to stab us in the back. It began innocently. A coffee shop encounter. I had gone to a small cafe I loved, one of the few places where no one recognized me, where I could write in my journal and sip tea without judgment. That's where Adrian appeared. He dropped his wallet while walking past me, and I picked it up before he even noticed. "Excuse me," I said, holding it out. He turned, startled, and then his eyes softened into that unforgettable smile. "Oh wow, thank you. You just saved me from a nightmare. My whole life is in there." Our conversation lasted only 5 minutes, but it felt effortless. Like I'd known him forever. He was charming without being overbearing, funny without trying too hard. And when he asked if he could buy me a coffee as thanks, I almost said no. But then I thought, why not? That coffee turned into lunch a week later. Lunch turned into late-night phone calls. And before I even realized it, Adrian was part of my world. He was careful, too. He never asked about my family's money directly. He never seemed interested in the mansion I lived in or the cars parked in our driveway. In fact, he joked once. "Honestly, Aria, I like that you don't try to impress me. I wouldn't care if you lived in a shoebox. I'm here for you, not your zip code." And my heart, already fragile from the wounds of the past, soaked it up like sunlight after a storm. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Loved. But if life has taught me anything, it's this. The moment you feel safest is often the moment the ground begins to crack beneath you. And Adrian? He wasn't who I thought he was. Not even close. The first few months with Adrian felt like a dream I didn't deserve. He had this uncanny way of making ordinary things extraordinary. A late-night walk? It became an adventure. Cooking pasta together? It felt like a scene out of a movie. Even silence wasn't awkward, it was comfortable, like we both belonged in the same quiet space. After everything with Maria, after watching my mom lose her trust in humanity, I started to believe Adrian was proof that good men existed. But even in those golden days, little things started to gnaw at me. Small, almost invisible cracks in the perfect picture he painted. The first time was at dinner. We were eating at a small Italian restaurant when my phone buzzed. It was my mom, asking if I'd be home soon. Adrian's smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened. "Do you always answer your mom this quickly?" he asked. I laughed nervously. "She worries, that's all." He leaned back, swirling his wine. "You're a grown woman, Aria. At some point, you've got to live your own life, not hers." I brushed it off as playful teasing. But a voice deep inside whispered, "Why does it matter to him how often I answer my mom's calls?" The second time was stranger. We were at my place, curled up on the couch, when he excused himself to the bathroom. Something in me stirred, a flicker of unease, so I glanced toward the hallway. He wasn't in the bathroom. He was standing at the door to my mother's study. His hand was on the knob. When he noticed me watching, he grinned sheepishly. "Sorry, I got lost." Big house. I told myself that was all it was. My mind playing tricks, seeing ghosts where there weren't any. But the third time? That was harder to ignore. One evening, he asked casually about Maria, the maid who betrayed us. I froze. Hardly anyone outside close family knew that story. It wasn't public. "How do you know about that?" I asked carefully. Adrian didn't even blink. "You told me, remember? A while back. Don't you?" But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. The way he said it so confidently, though, like he could rewrite reality if I doubted him, left me unsettled. Still, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in us. Because here's the truth, when you've been betrayed once, your heart craves healing so badly that sometimes you'll ignore the signs of the next betrayal. You'll tell yourself you're imagining things. You'll say this time is different. And so I stayed. I let him into my world more and more. Until one night, he looked at me across the dinner table, eyes soft, voice low, and said, "Aria, I think I'm falling in love with you." And like the fool I was, I whispered back the words that sealed my fate. "I love you too." But love, as I would soon discover, was exactly the weapon he planned to use against me. And by the time I realized it, it was already too late. Love is supposed to make you feel safe. But with Adrian, the deeper I fell for him, the more I felt like I was standing on thin ice, smiling, laughing, pretending everything was perfect, while the cracks spread silently beneath my feet. It started with money. He never outright asked for it. Not at first. Instead, he framed it as a dream. One evening, he told me about his idea for a startup. A luxury experience company, he called it. Exclusive events for elite clients. Not just a business, Aria, he said, his hand brushing mine across the table. A legacy. I smiled, charmed. I wanted to believe in his vision. And maybe, deep down, I wanted to prove to myself and to my mother that I wasn't just a pampered heiress. That I could build something with him. So when he asked me to invest a small amount, just seed money, I agreed. It was nothing compared to what I had access to. He kissed me so passionately that night it felt like I'd given him more than money. I'd given him my trust. But then it snowballed. There was always a reason. A contract that needed securing. An investor who pulled out at the last minute. A supplier who demanded payment up front. Each time, he framed it like an emergency, something temporary, something he would pay back as soon as the company launched. And each time, I gave in. Because I loved him. Still, something inside me started to ache. I noticed how easily he brushed off my concerns. How he changed the subject whenever I asked for details. How he seemed more excited about talking to lawyers and bankers than about spending time with me. But he always had the right words. The right smile. The right touch. And so, like a moth circling the flame, I kept moving closer. The second crack came with my mother. Adrian began encouraging distance between us. At first, it was subtle. "She doesn't understand you the way I do. You can't let her make all your choices forever. Aria, you deserve a life outside her shadow." But soon, it turned sharper. "She doesn't trust me, does she? She thinks I'm not good enough for you. She'll never accept us." And when I didn't immediately defend him, he looked at me with wounded eyes, whispering, "I just want to be your everything. Isn't that what love is supposed to be?" The third crack? That one cut deep. One night, after a party, we were walking back to my car. I stumbled a little in my heels, laughing, tipsy. Adrian caught me, but instead of steadying me gently, his grip on my arm was too tight. Painfully tight. "Careful," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Wouldn't want to make a fool of yourself." It was the first time I saw control in his smile. The first time his charm felt like a mask. But by then, I was too entangled to pull away. I was in love. I was invested. And I was blind. I didn't know then that Adrian wasn't just using me for money. I didn't know he wasn't just trying to win me over. I didn't know that I was just a piece in a revenge plan so much bigger, darker, and colder than I could ever have imagined. They say love blinds you. But no one tells you how suffocating it feels when the blindfold is finally ripped off. It began with whispers. At first, I dismissed them. A woman's laugh in the background when Adrian didn't answer my calls. A bill from a luxury hotel tucked into his jacket pocket. A text on his phone that flashed before he snatched it away. "Can't wait to see you again, Kissmark. He swore it was all business. "She's just a client. Don't be paranoid, Aria. Why don't you trust me?" And I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew fast. The breaking point came on a Friday night. Adrian told me he was flying to New York for a meeting. He kissed me goodbye, suitcase in hand, promising he'd be back Sunday. But Saturday afternoon, as I was walking into a cafe downtown, I froze. Because sitting by the window, laughing, his hand resting intimately on another woman's thigh, was Adrian. Not in New York. Not at a business meeting. Right there, in my city. And the woman? She wasn't just anyone. She was our old maid's daughter. The one my mother had fired years ago for stealing jewelry. The one who had disappeared without a trace. I stood outside that cafe, numb. The puzzle pieces slammed together with sickening clarity. The investments. The lies. The manipulation. Adrian hadn't found me. He'd targeted me. This wasn't love. This was payback. Revenge for my mother firing his. I confronted him that night. My voice shook, my hands trembled, but I demanded answers. At first, he laughed. Mocked me. "Sweet Aria, do you really think this was about love?" Then his words turned colder. "You were just convenient. Easy. Everything your mother took from mine? I'm taking back. And more. I felt the floor give way under me. The man I had trusted with my heart, my money, my future, wasn't just a liar. He was my enemy. I ran. Out of the apartment. Out of the dream I thought we'd built together. Out into the night air that suddenly felt too thin to breathe. But as I slammed the door behind me, I heard his voice one last time. You can't run from me, Aria. I'm already in your veins. And soon. I'll own everything. I wish I could say I never looked back. I wish I could say I was strong enough to cut him off cold. But that's not what happened. Because Adrian wasn't just after my money. He wasn't just after me. He was after everything. And he wasn't done yet. They don't tell you how quickly your life can unravel. One moment, you're in control. The next, you're drowning. And Adrian made sure I drowned fast. It started with the banks. I went to pay for groceries one morning, only to have my card declined. Confused, I checked my account. Empty. Every investment Adrian had persuaded me into gone. Every joint account drained. Even my personal trust fund transferred out under emergency authorizations I never signed. He had hacked, forged, manipulated his way into everything. Then came the humiliation. Paparazzi photos surfaced, me and Adrian kissing in public, me clinging to his arm at galas. But alongside them? Anonymous tips to tabloids, framing me as a spoiled heiress funding her boy toy with stolen inheritance. Headlines screamed. Millionaire's daughter squanders fortune on conman lover. Aria living off her mother's wealth while pretending to be independent. My mother's name was dragged through the mud. I became a punchline overnight. The final blow came from inside my own family. My mother's lawyers called me into her study one cold Monday morning. She sat there, stone-faced, her hands clasped tight. Aria, she said, voice clipped, your accounts are frozen. You've embarrassed this family for the last time. I tried to explain. I begged her to believe me. But Adrian had gotten to her first. He'd sent her carefully edited proof, emails, transfers, conversations, painting me as complicit. She didn't see me as a victim. She saw me as a traitor. And in that moment, I realized. I wasn't just broke. I was alone. Adrian didn't stop there. Everywhere I went, he was there. At restaurants, smirking in the corner. At charity events, whispering poison into the ears of people I once called friends. On social media, subtle posts with captions like, some debts can't be forgotten. He wanted me broken. He wanted me destroyed. And for a while, he succeeded. I lost weight. I stopped answering calls. I couldn't leave my apartment without people sneering, whispering. My friends cut me off. My own mother stopped visiting. And Adrian? He thrived. Every magazine called him a self-made investor. He wore tailored suits, drove expensive cars, bought with my money. He had the life I had handed him on a silver platter. But here's the thing about drowning. At some point, you stop thrashing. You go still. And in that stillness, something changes. You stop being afraid of the water. You start thinking about how to breathe again. And as I sat in that darkness, humiliated, stripped of everything, a new feeling took root. Not grief. Not despair. Anger. Adrian thought he'd won. But he had underestimated the one thing I still had left. Me. And if he wanted a war, I was finally ready to give him one. You learn a lot about yourself when you're destroyed. When you're stripped down to nothing, no money, no reputation, no allies, what's left is the rawest version of you. And what was left of me? Someone who no longer cared about forgiveness. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted blood. Step 1, the watcher. I started small. I forced myself out of bed, dressed plainly, and followed him. Adrian thought he was untouchable now, flashing his wealth, making appearances everywhere. He didn't notice the quiet figure in the back, the woman in sunglasses nursing a coffee for hours, watching every move. I documented everything. Who he met. Where he spent his money. Which women he charmed. Which politicians he whispered to. He wasn't careful anymore. Success had made him sloppy. And every note I took became a weapon in the making. Step 2, the mirror. One night, I sat in the dark scrolling through his social media. He had posted a picture of himself at a gala, grinning with his arm around another woman. His caption read, New Beginnings. The comments praised him. They mocked me. And then something clicked. Adrian wasn't just building wealth. He was building an image. If I couldn't hit his wallet yet, I could shatter his mirror. I began creating anonymous accounts. Not blatant attacks, those would be ignored. No, I dripped poison slowly, subtle comments, carefully leaked tips, whispers of scandals that made people question him. Strange how his numbers don't add up. Didn't he bankrupt that last investor? I heard he reuses the same promises on every woman. Doubt is contagious. And once planted, it grows like rot. Step 3, the snake pit. But rumors weren't enough. I wanted proof. That's when I remembered something my mother used to say about Adrian back when she trusted him. He's brilliant, but careless. He doesn't read contracts, he assumes. So I started reaching out. Quietly. To the investors he'd scammed. To the women he'd ghosted. To the partners he'd promised shares to, only to disappear when it was time to pay. I presented myself as a victim too, because I was. And slowly, carefully, people began to talk. Every conversation added a piece to the puzzle, a lie, a fraud, a betrayal. And when the puzzle was complete, it showed a monster. The transformation. The funny thing? As I gathered every secret, every dirty little scheme, I felt myself changing. The broken girl who once cried on her bathroom floor was gone. In her place stood someone colder. Smarter. Crueler. Someone who could look at Adrian and no longer feel fear. I began to smile again, not out of joy, but because I knew something he didn't. I wasn't his victim anymore. I was his shadow. And I was coming for him. The oath. One night, I stood by my window, watching the city glow beneath me. I whispered out loud, to no one. You wanted a game, Adrian. Fine. But you forgot one thing. I don't play to win. I play to ruin. And with that, my revenge truly began. When you want to destroy a man like Adrian, you don't go straight for the throat. You start with his skin. You make him itch, scratch, bleed little by little, until he can't tell if the pain is real or imagined. So my first strike had to be small. Subtle. Untraceable. The slip of the mask. Adrian had built a company on charm and false promises. He bragged constantly about a new tech project that would revolutionize markets. But in reality? He hadn't built anything. He just borrowed ideas, slapped his name on them, and lured investors with shiny numbers. I had copies of contracts, remember, I'd gathered them from angry ex-partners. One of them, a man named Victor, had been cheated out of hundreds of thousands. When I reached out, his bitterness poured like acid. Give me one chance, he hissed on the phone, and I'll burn Adrian to the ground. I smiled, unseen. You'll get your chance. Trust me. Strike 1, seeds of doubt. Victor still had connections to the press. Not mainstream yet, small finance blogs, whisper networks where reputation is currency. I gave him documents. Proof that Adrian's numbers were fake. He didn't publish them outright, that would be too easy. Instead, he asked questions publicly. The kind of questions that investors hate. Why haven't Adrian's quarterly numbers matched projections? Is there really a working prototype, or just an empty promise? Sources claim he owes several contractors unpaid fees, care to explain? Adrian brushed it off at first. He laughed, posted a smug photo of himself sipping champagne, captioned, haters gonna hate. But I saw it. The tiny crack in his perfect mirror. Strike 2, the poison chalice. His second weakness? Women. Adrian couldn't resist them. I set up an anonymous tip account. Sent screenshots, carefully fabricated but based on truth, suggesting Adrian had a pattern of luring women into business meetings that turned personal. Nothing illegal. Nothing provable. But enough to paint a picture. Soon, whispers spread. Investors' wives started asking questions. Social media threads lit up with speculation. And Adrian? For the first time, he was forced to respond. He issued a statement calling it baseless gossip. But the more he denied it, the more it looked like guilt. Watching him twist. The best part wasn't the chaos itself. It was watching him react. He stopped smiling in photos. He started calling old contacts at 3 a.m., demanding loyalty. He fired a junior employee just for asking about the rumors. The empire was still standing, but the foundation had shifted. And he knew it. His mistake. One night, I saw him at a gala again. He looked restless, jittery. And then, oh, fate is beautiful, he spotted me. Aria, he said, voice dripping with fake warmth, you look alive. Alive. As if he expected me to be dead. I tilted my head, smiled softly, and replied. Of course I'm alive, Adrian. I wouldn't miss the show. The flicker in his eyes told me everything. He suspected nothing concrete, but he felt me. He felt the shadow breathing down his neck. And that was enough. My rule of revenge. I walked away that night knowing one thing. This was just the beginning. I didn't want him broke yet. I didn't want him ruined yet. I wanted him paranoid. Sleepless. Looking over his shoulder, questioning everyone around him. Because once a man starts doubting his own empire, you don't even have to push. It collapses by itself. Adrian wasn't stupid. Arrogant, cruel, reckless, yes. But not stupid. The moment investors started pulling away, he knew. Someone was behind it. And he wanted blood. The paranoia. I watched from the shadows as Adrian unraveled. He fired 2 of his assistants, accusing them of leaking his files. He screamed at his lawyer in the middle of a restaurant. He started checking his phone every 10 seconds, muttering under his breath. The man who once prided himself on being untouchable now looked like a cornered rat. And I wasn't even finished. The bait. And that was my story. Sometimes revenge doesn't come with explosions or dramatic fights, it comes with patience, precision, and the courage to walk away when the game is won. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Tell me in the comments. Did Adrian get exactly what he deserved? Or do you think Aria should have gone even further? I read every comment, and your thoughts inspire the next stories we bring to life. Until then. Remember, justice may be slow, but it always finds its way.